Welcome to my weekly webcast. I thank you all who participated in responding to my tweet when I asked you to send in questions for Ask Chuck, my regular webcast. You did that. I'll go to two of those in just a minute, but I thank you for responding on Facebook or Twitter or by email so I can answer your questions. Those that we don't answer this way, and I'll only do two this way, is to respond to the other questions, answer by email or by postal mail. This week's questions come from Nate of Indianola. Asked from Twitter, how can people stop Harry Reid from using nuclear option on the health care bill? Well, if Harry Reid is determined to use nuclear option, reconciliation, there's nothing that 40 Republicans can do to stop him from doing that. On the other hand, as well, if he doesn't use nuclear option and he decides to go just a regular order, as long as 60 Democrats keep together, 40 Republicans are one vote short of stopping him from doing that as well. Our only hope in the latter case of regular order is if there's 5 to 10 Democrats that don't want to go along with something, then perhaps that would stop it from happening as long as Republicans stick together, and I think Republicans will stick together. If that would happen, he could still use reconciliation or nuclear option, and there's nothing we could do to stop it. In fact, even 10 Democrats being against that approach wouldn't be enough to stop it as well, because it only takes 50 votes plus the vice president's vote making it 51 to get to that majority. But there is something that the people can do, including you there in Indianola. At least in 2 instances, I've seen a massive amount of phone calls to Capitol Hill make a difference. One that just about stopped something, that would have been last February when the stimulus bill was up, just in my office. In the course of about a week, I got 5,200 phone calls, about 83% opposed to it. Every other office was getting those same number of phone calls. And if the Democrats had kept their word, leaving the stimulus bill on the internet for 72 hours, that bill probably would have been defeated. But they saw the barrage of phone calls coming, and they rushed it through in a midnight effort back in February. The other time was approximately 2 years ago when immigration was up, and there were so many phone calls coming in against amnesty that the phone lines were actually filled up, so nobody could even get through. And that did stop the amnesty issue with immigration. So I guess the moral of that story is that there's about 2 to 3 weeks before a bill might come to final vote in the United States Senate. If we get a massive amount of grassroots opposition, it may make a big difference. I would hope it would make a big difference, because, you know, I think there's a lot of good things that are in the health care reform bill, but there's so many bad things in it that I could not vote for it. But it'd be nice to be able to get those good things, plus medical malpractice reform, tort reform, because that's so expensive, because doctors give a lot of tests that aren't needed because they think you're going to sue them. And another thing would be to get the sale of insurance across state lines for health insurance, like we do for car insurance, as an example. So there could be bipartisanship in a bill and still do some good that needs to be done for health care. The second question comes from Sherry, Webster City, via Facebook. How can we keep American jobs here? We have more regulations than most governments do for their manufacturing, so reducing regulation. We have higher corporate tax rates than most other countries do. so we could reduce the marginal tax rates. We have environmental laws that are very unfair compared to other countries, that if we were a little more reasonable there, we would retain a lot of manufacturing jobs. And lastly, the product liability lawsuits, if we were to reform our tort laws, because most other countries don't have such lawsuits, and we have to build the cost of that into our products, we could be much more competitive and keep jobs here in America. So, Sherry, that's what I would suggest as things we ought to be doing in the Congress of the United States, and most of those things I would support doing to keep particularly manufacturing jobs here. We might have some other jobs other than manufacturing leaving the country, but I think that's the largest number of jobs that have left the country. This week on the Senate floor, we're going to have the unemployment compensation bill up, and we'll probably finish that bill this week. We're going to have some votes on judges yet this very day, and I encourage you to send in your email, tweets, and Facebook for questions for next week. And thank you for being involved with this webcast. See you next week.